I have to tell you, Obamacare is really, I think, the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. And it is, in a way, it is slavery, in a way, because it is making all of us subservient to the government. And it was never about health care, it was about control.
That was Dr. Ben Carson, the Values Voters Summit. He joins us right here on News One now. Doctor, I want to go to that particular issue there. Sure. Those comments there offended a number of people in terms of saying that the Affordable Care Act is the worst thing since slavery. Okay. When we look at, obviously, the continuum in this country, when we look at Jim Crow, when we look at the things that took place, we look at the lynchings of black soldiers still in their uniforms, I think African Americans and others could come up with a whole lot of stuff that has happened in this country since slavery that would be considered more heinous than the Affordable Care Act. And when we think about even the idea of how heinous slavery was, do you regret making that comparison? And does that diminish the pain and the heartache that black folks and others endured between the period of slavery and today?
Well, let me explain exactly what I meant by that. First of all, slavery is by far the worst thing that ever happened in this country. I fully understand that. I've had my roots traced back. I understand some of the incredible things that my ancestors went through. Some of them, a brother and a sister, were separated when they were like 6 and 8 years old. And they swore that they would find each other. It wasn't until they were in their 60s after slavery had ended. Just horrendous things. So I'm not trying to make light of slavery. What I'm trying to get people to understand is what is happening with a government program that takes control of the most important thing you have, which is your health. And, part of it comes from the fact that I do a lot of reading, and not only about American history, but world history, reading about Marxists and neo-Marxists and some of the things that they have advocated. And thinking about America and how to bring America under control. You go and read it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. They said one of the most important, if not the most important thing, is to make the people dependent. And the best way to make the people dependent is to take control of their health care.
But when you talk about dependent, I mean, clearly it wasn't a question of slaves being dependent. But why even bring that up? Look, I've seen other folks who use slavery in their analogies, and the point I make is, you know what? Leave that alone. Leave that alone, because what happens is when we go there, then all of a sudden it brings other issues. It's just like when people say, oh, Obama is being like Hitler. Really? I mean, again, and so when we try to make those sort of analogies, why not allow the criticism, the critique to stand on its own versus trying to somehow suggest that it's almost like slavery?
Because I'm fighting two different wars here. Not only the war of health care, and I have some ideals I hope we can discuss about how, in fact, to give everybody health care. I think is very important. But also the political correctness issue. There's certain words, certain terms you're just not supposed to use, and when you use them, a bunch of people say, oh, he used that word, and they change the argument. The argument here is about our health care and our control, and whether we want to keep that control or do we want to turn it over to the government. It's the very thing that the founders of this nation were concerned about.
And look, understand, but my whole point is, I don't play the game of the word police, but for me, someone who, yes, read, who has studied, there are some things that I am not going to raise to the level of slavery. And there's no way in the world even the Affordable Care Act even comes close to that.
I never said it did. I said it was the worst thing since slavery.
But you also said it was also like slavery, because in terms of people being dependent.
In terms of people being dependent, stop and think for a minute about what's happened here. You have a situation where a nation that was founded for, of, and by the people now has a government saying, you must do this. You must do that.
But doesn't our government already do that?
You must abide by this.
But don't we already do that? But don't we have fuel efficiency standards? Don't we have safety standards? Don't we also have we have requirements across the country? When President Ronald Reagan when he was in office, he made it perfectly clear: if you do not raise the minimum drinking age, you will not get federal highway funds. Every state across, now it was, you have the choice not to take the federal highway funds, but if you're a state, you know doggone well you need federal highway funds in order to keep your roads straight. And so we've established national standards before.
But those things don't even come close. Those things that you mentioned don't even come close to your health care, the most valuable thing you have. And when you put someone else in charge of that, you start a cascade of control that is the very thing that Saul Alinsky talked about, why he said that was number one. You had to gain control of people's health. I want people to understand that.
But how's the government in control if you are able to go to Health Exchange or go to healthcare.gov to select a plan for you and your family, and then also what it does is establishes a level, a standard level, because look, we recognize that healthcare is the biggest cost moving forward in this country. You talked about debt, and the reality is that our healthcare costs are exploding, and so we have to somehow confront that. And I cover county government. Sure. You have county hospitals, county budgets that are exploding because county hospitals have to cover folks. And so taxpayers are spending more money every year because of property taxes to cover those budget shortfalls.
Now you asked the question, how does that put the government in control? When the government tells you, doesn't suggest to you, but tells you, you must do this or you will have this penalty about something that is the most important thing that you or your family control, and then takes the IRS and puts them in charge of enforcement, an agency that has the ability to come into your life and destroy it and cause you all kinds of financial problems. That is control.
But also, federal government also tells us you must pay taxes. That's not a choice either.
Well, I have some ideas on that too.
Okay, all right, right. And I'm sure Wesley Snipes had some idea about that too when he sat in prison for 3 years because he didn't pay his taxes.